Hey everyone, hope that you had a great weekend. Today we're going to knock out the last few of our exponent rules, and there aren't very many. We're just dealing with negative exponents today, and the reason it gets its own section is because they can be a little bit intuitively weird just because we've never seen like a negative exponent before. I mean, just think about like 2 to the negative third. Like, what does that mean? What does it mean that we have a negative number up there? And it actually works out pretty cool. It's neat how we can show how this works, but it takes a little bit of thinking. So let's start off with what a negative exponent is. So, how can we come up with a formula for b to the negative n? Well, we're going to go back to the chart. I promised you we'd come back to this. That gave us the 0th power. So let's go back to our idea of having our number n. And then over here, we're going to have 2 to the nth power. So last week, we did from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's just go up to 5. So let's do 2 to each of those powers. So 2 squared is 4. 2 to the third is 8. 2 to the 4th power is 16. 2 to the 5th power is 32. And we note again, as we go up the ladder, we're multiplying by 2 every time. 4 times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. And as we go upwards, we're dividing by 2. So we divide by 2 here, we divide by 2 here, we divide by 2 here. And that got us to the idea of how 2 to the 1st is 2. And anything to the 0 power, remember we said, is 1. Now, what do you think happens as we continue going up? Well, we divided by 2 here. We divided by 2 here. If I go to negative 1 for my exponent, what do you think we're going to have? Well, we're going to divide by 2 again, which gives me 1/2. Then negative 2, well, I need to divide by 2 again. Gives me 1/4. Negative 3 would give me 1/8. And look at this. We have like a mirror image going on here. So 1/2 and 2 are kind of mirrors of each other. 1/4 and 4 are kind of mirror images of each other. And that happens when we have these negatives with their match. Negative 1/8 is kind of like getting 8 down here. So it looks like what's happening is as I go with the negative exponents here, it just flips over the fraction. So like 2 to the negative 5 would give me 1/32. Which is exactly how it works. So 2 to the negative n would actually just be 1/2 to the nth power. So we see that here. Negative 2, it's 1/2 squared. Negative 3, it's 1/2 to the third. And that will continue going up. So in general, b to the negative n power is just 1 over b to the n. So it just flips it to the bottom of a fraction. And that's really all there is to it. That's kind of cool. So let's try some examples real quick here. 5 to the negative 2. Well, according to our definition, that's just 1/5 squared, which we could write as 1/25. And we're done. X to the negative 4, well, that's just 1/x to the 4th. And we're done. 2 to the negative 5th, we did this on the last page actually. 1/2 to the 5th, which is 1/32. So we have a negative exponent, just flips it to the bottom. Now here we have a little bit more complicated expression, but it still works the same way. X squared doesn't go anywhere, so we just got x squared. W to the negative 2, that's going to go to the bottom, so we have w squared on the bottom. Y to the 4th doesn't have a negative, so it's going to stay up top. Z to the negative 22, going to go to the bottom. Z to the 22nd power. So notice, when we have things that do not have a negative, they just kind of stay where they are. If we have something with a negative exponent, it just gets flipped to the other part of the fraction. Now, the big mistake I see people make here is they still keep it negative. They put it to the bottom, but they keep it negative. But negative, what that does is it flips it. So it puts it to the bottom of the fraction, and we're done. That's all we have to do with it. All right. So let's move on and see if we can get some more interesting things going on here. A over b to the negative n. So we learned last week that we can do our fraction to a power by distributing them here. So we have a to the negative n. Whoop. Oh, let's do this with some numbers first. Let's try to actually prove this. So let's do like, I don't know, 2/3 to the negative, let's say 3. So we learned last week we can distribute this to the top number and to the bottom number. So this is going to be 2 to the negative third over 3 to the negative third. Now, we just said when we have a negative, it flips its spot. So this is going to put the 2 to the bottom. I'm going to put the 2 to the bottom. And the 3 to the negative third, well, that's going to give me 1/3 cubed. And we haven't talked a lot about this with fractions because it's kind of tricky. But you can move the reciprocal to the top. So that could actually get moved up to the top. So what we're going to have here is we're going to have 3 cubed over 2 cubed. So what happened? They just switched places. So when we have a negative exponent, it just flops where it is. So in this case, the 2 goes to the bottom, the 3 comes to the top. So 3 cubed is 27. On the bottom, 2 cubed is 8. And that's our result. So all this does is it ends up being b to the n on top now. So it moves that b to the top, and then on the bottom, I'm going to have a to the n. So all it does is it kind of makes them switch places. And that's it. So I think that might be our last exponent rule, which is exciting. So let's try some examples. Mixing all kinds of rules together here. Lots of rules we're mixing. And let's see what happens. So here, let's look at the numbers first. So we have 2 over 4. That reduces to 1 over 2. So I'm just going to, we don't even have to write the 1. So I'm just going to put a 2 on the bottom. Now on the top here, let's see, that x to the negative 2, that's going to flip it to the bottom. So the x to the negative 2 is going to be flipped to the bottom. So I'll have an x squared. And let's just deal with the top. The y cubed is not negative, so the y cubed is going to stay up top. And then z also does not have a negative, so it's going to stay up top. Now let's look at what's on the bottom. We have an x to the 4th, so that has to stay. So we might be able to use same base here to add those exponents. Y to the negative 4th, well, negative 4 means that it's going to be flipped. So that part comes up to the top. So we have y to the 4th up top. And then we have z cubed does not have any negatives, so it's going to stay on the bottom. So notice what just happened here. This negative 2 moved the x to the bottom. So there it went. That negative 4 on the bottom moved that y up to the top. So whenever you have a negative exponent, it just flips the position. That's all you have to worry about. So now we can combine this a lot more. Let's see what we can do. On the top, we have a y cubed and a y to the 4th. So we have 3 y's here, 4 y's here. Altogether, we have 7 y's. So we have y to the 7th. On the bottom, let's see, we have 2 x squared, x to the 4th. That's x to the 6th power. Let's look at our z's. We got 1 up top, we got 3 on the bottom. That 1 z is going to cancel, and I'll be left with 2 z's on the bottom. So I just have a z squared. And there we go. Much simpler expression. Much simpler expression. Now let's look at this one over here. So we're going to use our rule where if we have a negative exponent for the entire thing, it's just going to flip everybody. Because the negative 2 would go to the top, the negative 2 would go to the bottom, everything's going to flip. So the 4x squared y squared is going to come to the top. And that's all raised to the 2nd power. Because what we've done is we've lost the negative because we flipped it to the top, but we still have to square it. Then the 6x y to the 4th is going to go to the bottom, and it's also going to be squared. So now this gets distributed to everybody. I'm going to skip a couple steps here. Let's see what happens. So 4 squared is 16. X squared squared, I multiply 2 times 2 is x to the 4th. Y squared squared is y to the 4th. Then on the bottom, I'll have 6 squared is 36. X squared. Looks like I'll have y to the 4th squared, which we multiply those is 8. So those are all rules that we learned last week. If you have trouble with those rules, you're going to want to go back and look at the videos from last week. Now let's see, 16 and 36 are both divisible by 4. So if I divide by 4, I'll have 4 on top and 9 on the bottom. Now let's see, I have x to the 4th on top and x squared on the bottom. So 2 of those x's will cancel. I'll be left with x squared on the top. Because the x squared on the bottom just goes away, and that 4 just changes to a 2. Y to the 4th over y to the 8th, well, 4 of those y's are going to cancel, and I'll be left with y to the 4th on the bottom. And that's my answer. And that's it. Got myself in trouble on the bottom there a little bit. I can't quite see that. Let's change our circle. There we go. All right. Let's take a look at this one over here. This one's interesting. So we look for those negative exponents, and those are going to require us to flip the x and the y up to the top. I'll erase those because I can't see it very well. So the x squared is going to come to the top. The y cubed is also going to come to the top. So we have nothing left on the bottom. So one way we can write that is we'll have, so let's put both those things to the top. So we have 3x cubed, y cubed, z. We brought an x squared up to the top. We also brought in a y cubed up to the top. You could put a 1 on the bottom, but dividing by 1 is just itself, so we can just ignore that. Now let's see if we can combine a little bit. X cubed and x squared, we have 5 x's altogether, so I have 3x to the 5th So it took care of the x's. Y cubed times y cubed, we add the exponents, so we'll have y to the 6th, and then we've got a z hanging out. And that's it. Last one is one from your worksheet. So if you want to pull out your yellow sheet and give this one a shot. Oh, no, not a yellow sheet. Sorry, we have a new sheet today. It's green, I believe. It's the negative exponents one for 7.3. So if you look at number 12, let's see what we can do here. Remember those negatives, those are going to flip both of these to the opposite part of the fraction. So those are both going to go to the bottom. The 4, though, does not have any exponents. The 4 is going to hang out on top. On the bottom, let's just put these guys in the front. So we'll have m cubed. We'll have n to the 4th. And then we have 3m to the 4th n squared. Let's pull that 3 out to the front. So we have 4 over 3. Let's see here. That's supposed to be an m. M cubed, m to the 4th. That's m to the 7th altogether, because we have 3 m's here, 4 m's here, altogether 7 m's. And then we have n to the 4th. N squared is n to the 6th altogether. That's the best we can do. You'll notice on your sheet it says simplify so that all exponents are positive. So here we have all positive exponents. So all you have to do is move those negatives to the opposite part of the fraction, and you're good. That's all you have to do. And that's it. Today you're going to do your green worksheet, so 7.3 worksheet. Do give these a shot. You should be able to do all the problems. There are only a couple on the back. And I come back tomorrow. Hopefully you're watching this video on Monday, and I'll be back on Tuesday. Looking forward to being able to get back with you guys and to review this stuff before the quiz that we have on Wednesday. So I love you guys. That's why I'm here. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.